Pistorius is released from prison tomorrow, has been put on hold by the South African Justice Department based on concerns about an earlier parole decision. He's incarcerated for killing his girlfriend in 2013. But the big legal story here at home, emotional testimony today in the rape trial at an elite New Hampshire prep school. This morning, the 16-year-old accuser faced cross-examination about her side of the story.
Throughout your explanations to the prosecutor about why you said or did not do or did not say things, it was because you were cloudy or confused. Were you already being cloudy and confused the day before you got together with Owen?
No.
Well, why were you cloudy?
I was raped. I was violated in so many ways. Of course, I was traumatized. I'm sorry.
A difficult day in court there. And today, another witness, a nurse who examined that accuser you just heard, and we are disguising the voice for anonymity. Well, this person testified that that young woman told her the encounter was consensual. Now, for analysis, we bring in criminal defense attorney Keith Sullivan and former prosecutor Karen DeSoto. A good day to you both. This is difficult, but of course important, especially as the nation has looked a lot more deeply at how reports of sexual assault are processed and ultimately charged when they are. Tell us about the prosecution's case here, what we're learning from this testimony.
Well, the prosecution's case here is really based on the testimony of the accuser. And now when you have inconsistent statements, it really puts a poor light on her. However, this isn't even 10 or 15 years ago when an accuser got the benefit of the doubt, right? There's been lots of rape cases in the news. We've had superstars, and we've even had Bill Cosby accused. So now when you hear a woman accusing somebody of rape, you know, people start to ask questions. They just don't accept it as truth. And so now we see here across an examination and a very slow, methodical strategy to try and get to the truth of the matter.
Keith, looking at this from the defense perspective, and we're not deep into their side of the case by any means, but as Karen was saying, we know some of the key testimony here. You have an accuser, as we just heard, explaining what she says happened to her. And yet, as I mentioned, a nurse who many people would view as somewhat independent, reflecting that what she was told was that this was consensual intercourse.
Yeah, this case is going to come down to credibility on both sides. And apparently, the defense has taken the bold step of stating to the jury that the defendant will testify and he's going to tell his whole story in full before the jury.
How unusual is that?
Extremely rare. But you have a kid who's 18 who doesn't appear to have any prior criminal history, so the collateral attack...
18 at the time, 19 now.
18 at the time, 19 now, but 18 at the time of the act. So the traditional collateral acts of, you know, criminal conduct, things of that nature, seem to be out when you're dealing with this kid. And they've really watered him down. I keep looking at the screen, and it's like Harry Potter.
What do you mean, watered him down?
Harry Potter is sitting in the courtroom. You look at it and you say, the jury is saying, and the prosecutor addressed it yesterday in her opening, 2 days ago rather, in her opening, you're going to look at him and think, how could he do this? And he sits there with the glasses, he looks kind of nerdy. We've looked at other pictures before this trial where he looks like a jock, he looks like a buff kid. Big contrast between the two.
Karen, another key piece here that is, you mentioned decades ago, that is somewhat different is there's extensive internet communication on Facebook and email between these two. How does that work for a jury, a particular jury of adults that may not be versed in how younger people are communicating?
Harry, I think Keith could probably tell you that there's not a case that I've had in 10 years that doesn't have texts, Facebook posts, all kinds of electronic digital stuff. And it is very impactful because now kids are not picking up the phone, they're talking. They're texting, and those texts always wind up in court. And that gives us a little bit insight into what they were thinking at the time and also during the incident. Here, the prosecution has a problem because it appears that the accuser and the defendant were going back and forth. And of course, what is a jury gonna think? Why are they going back and forth? Why is she even texting him back if she was raped? So these are the type of issues that 10, 15 years ago you weren't dealing with, but now you have to explain away all of these pieces of evidence.
Keith, from a defense perspective, how would you use those Facebook messages? Because basically after the alleged incident, you have her responding positively, saying nice things to him, although her team is saying, the prosecution essentially, that, look, that was under duress. She was afraid after what happened to her.
Sure, she calls him a gem. She calls him an angel. He says, I love you. She says, that's good. This doesn't sound like a
Why
typical...
text back at all?
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
going to be the problem.
And then
for
she
the jury.
asks him, did you use a condom? But what's interesting is the independent evidence doesn't really support either one of their versions. Remember, he said to the police, I put the condom on and then I had a divine intervention and I stopped. That also, as her story is a little questionable, that too is a little questionable.
And he's going to have to answer for that. That's going to be the crux of when he takes the stand. He's going to have to, if he lied, he's now going to have to tell a jury, guess what? I lied. And of course, you're going to try and explain that away and say I was young and I didn't have an attorney with me and I didn't know what I was saying. And this is what happens. It's usually a he said, she said. And nobody wants to believe ever that a woman would lie about such things. But Keith and I can both tell you that we've had cases where people did in fact lie. And that is rare and that is not the norm, but it does happen.
It does happen.
While I have you both here, the other big case a lot of people are talking about, Jared Fogle, former spokesperson for Subway, agreeing to plead guilty to sex crimes, child pornography charges. What do you make of this case? This is a person that a lot of people thought of very positively.
Horrific. And what's horrific about this case is that there's 14 alleged victims here. He's only pleading to 2 counts, so partly you want to say, what's going on here? Why is he only starting at 5 years up to 12.5 years? And this is federal time, not state time, and Keith can tell you that when you have a client in a federal case, they're doing the full amount of time. There's no good time like you do in state court. So these are very serious charges, but for the serious charges, you would think that he'd be facing a lot more. So there's a lot of information, maybe in the investigation, that we don't know about.
He has been given a phenomenal deal. They negotiated superbly on this, his defense attorneys, and I think, and you see this a lot in child sex cases, it's because they don't want to re-victimize the child by having them testify against this person. He's charged
because they're so young.
Because they're so young and it's so traumatic for them, as we see in the other case.
And there could be lots of other
It's
people
traumatic.
making the arrangements in this case.
Yeah, so it's 2 counts, 1 victim, and that's it.
Right. Yeah.
He got a great deal. Too good of a deal.
All right, Keith and Karen, we appreciate your expertise today. As we pass the half-hour mark here.